So just to start, I know that this is a crazy time right now in the country. I got a text message from my good friend last night. He said to me, in all honesty, I know you don't really watch the news so much anymore. Do you know what's going on in the country? So I said, I found out, I heard from somebody else. And he suggested that I speak about it to the students. So I tried to tell him that I have a very different perspective now than I used to have about media, about politics, about world events and news. But the one thing I will say, and this is what I said to my friend as well, when a person's not happy, when a person doesn't feel whole on the inside, it pours out on the outside. What looks like that the whole country, everybody feels that they're not being heard, or that they're being mitigated, or that they're not being empathized with or understood or felt, whether it's from the right side or the left side or the side. I explained to my friend that often when a person feels a lack of sense of self, then he always feels that he's being a victim by the world from everybody else. And the Jewish way is not to feel like a victim. The way of the Torah is to understand that everything comes from Hashem, and that everything that we have is a gift. And that the truth is that even though things appear to be bad on the outside, it's really just a reflection of what's inside. And I told my friend that all the efforts that we make, whether it's political, whether it's society, all of these efforts are treating symptoms. It's like going to a doctor and you have a problem. There's a sore, there's a hole in the inside of you, and they give you Tylenol. So the Tylenol dulls the pain, but Tylenol does not take away the problem. And the whole concept of Torah, which is or, light, this is an inner light. This is a light which is internalized on the inside, and then it pours out on the outside. But the way that the modern world is, and I told my friend this as well, is that we have, in the process of making so much progress on the outside of us, meaning on the external part of the world and the material part of the world, that we have grown leaps and bounds in science and in medicine and in all material aspects, that we've taken gigantic leaps, even just in the past 50 years. So what happened, though, is that along the way to doing that, because of our intense focus on that part, we have lost ourselves. And as a result of that, all of the increasing technology or advancements on the external part of society have only led to, in a lot of ways, an intensifying of the lackings on the inside, because we're not paying attention to it. And the more that we are focused on the outside, the more that we think that the problem's on the outside. And we can't even recognize that there's something going on inside of us, that the pain is starting inside, that the brokenness is starting inside. The Baal Shem Tov says, and it's based on a Gemara, that anything that you see in the world that's lacking is really you're lacking. Now, when a secular person sees what's happening, he is outraged, whether he's on the left or the right or however he feels. And obviously it's an atrocity. Obviously it's very, very sad that people died in such a fashion. But it would be very, very unique and rare for a person to see that and say, is that war going on inside of me? Is there a part of me that's trying to leap up over the White House and take control of my life and make it the way that I want it to go, instead of the way that the world is going. This would take deep psychological and spiritual insight to be able to do this. And the main point that I'm trying to bring out is that the less that you feel whole on the inside, the more you have to try and make moves on the outside. And this is the reason often that you see that people who are very unhappy, they spend a lot of time doing physical things, whether it be working, whether it be doing drugs, whether it be hanging out with their friends, whether it be watching TV, whether it be doing all of these external activities. And I know it very well from growing up, that, and you don't even realize you're just looking for a good time because you're not happy. But ultimately that never provides an answer, because the answer is not on the outside, it's on the inside. So my best suggestion for everybody here is to look deeper inside. To look deeper inside. I know the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whenever there was something that would happen to the Jewish people, he would say that we would need to intensify our spiritual efforts. We would need to look deeper inside. We would need to take on another mitzvah, and not to think that this problem exists outside of us. And this is the Torah approach. This is the spiritual perspective of reality. And that is that everything on the outside is a reflection of what's inside. And it's very, very easy, especially with media nowadays, that you're besieged by videos and images and talking heads, people who, because they're charismatic or because they have an opinion, that means that they know what they're talking about. And they can get you outraged or enraged. They can get you feeling like completely out of control and scared out of your mind and furious at what's happening. But we need to understand that Rabbi Nachman says that your mind, your neshama, your seichel, is precious. It's like a treasure. And it's something which is very vulnerable to outside influence. And you need to be, he says that you need to be very, very careful and vigilant that you protect it. And what does it mean to protect it? It means that you are being proactive in terms of what you're letting come inside of you. The way that we live in this world, in the modern world, is a free-for-all. Whatever anybody thinks, says, or feels goes up on social media, and we just look at it and we think, okay, I'm not affected by it. I just go on with my day. But you are affected by it. Your neshama is very, very, very sensitive to everything that it sees. But the only way to see that, and I told my friend this as well, that because Rabbi Nachman is so makpid, he's so, it was such a serious matter by him that you do not attach to internalized draw and secular wisdom. And only because of that, and obviously I was having my own struggles and I was looking for answers, and he says that this is the answer. So when I actually took that on myself not to see these things, and obviously now, Baruch Hashem, for the majority of the past few years, I have almost completely not seen anything. You realize how much that your thoughts and your feelings and your actions are dictated by outside forces. And the Torah calls this Mitzrayim. The Torah calls this slavery. And we don't think of slavery like that because we think of slavery as physical. But slavery at its essence is mental. It's psychological. And therefore, I highly suggest that if you want to make a positive change in your life, in the world, in the community, in your family, you need to start with yourself. And if everybody starts with themselves, you'll see that will pour out to your family, that will pour out to your community, that will pour out to the world. And obviously, like Rabbi Nachman says, whenever you see a lacking in the world, it's your responsibility to fill it. How do you fill it? Not by running to the White House and jumping on top of things or protesting, but by going and talking to Hashem and crying to him and asking that he should help. By the way, I don't know if anybody realizes, but every single event that's been taking place recently, whether it's the COVID virus, whether it's the presidential race here, whether it's the lack of a government system right now in Israel, everything is making people feel completely out of control. And we got to a point because of our technological advancements that the human race has taken on, that they feel that they control reality, and everything right now, whether it's medical, whether it's societal, is making people feel very scared. And why is it making everybody feel very scared? Because it's making people feel out of control. But like Rabbi Nachman says, that if you have a pandemic going on, he wrote this when he was like 8 or 9 or 10, you have something societal or worldwide which is sweeping over. He says a person who has real yira, he has real emunah, he not only is not scared out of his mind when these things happen, he's actually very calm. And this is, and the reason is because that person believes that Hashem controls the world. And this is the ikr. And Hashem is not going to let us go through a whole life, go through a whole generation without figuring out that we are not in control. And no matter how much we resist and no matter how much we push, ultimately everyone is going to have to come to the realization that there is something greater which is causing things to take place in our life. And for this reason, the Jews in Mitzrayim, they screamed and cried out because that slavery was a mental slavery. It was a psychological slavery. The Jews in Mitzrayim, first they were told to come because there was a famine, right? And like many Jewish populations, why do they come to America or why do they go anywhere? Because there's a type of famine in their homeland. You know, whether you're Bukharian and you had communism, whether you're Temani and you had all the terrorism that was taking place over there, whether you are Ashkenazi and you had the Holocaust. So all of these things cause us that like a famine, and then we go to another place. We feel great wherever we go. They make us feel very royal. We end up having tremendous success there. They have us work there. Like Paro, he started to give us work, but he paid us for it. So we felt good about it. Okay, great. And then ultimately he took the pay away, but we're still working. And now there's nothing else to do because we're already locked in that this is my life. I work, I toil for forces which I don't believe in, and I can't stop. And it just intensifies more and more and more and more. The entire paradigm of Mitzrayim and the Jewish people in Egypt is not a physical paradigm. It's a spiritual, psychological reality. And that is that there are forces which co-opt your freedom, that they co-opt your mind, and they make you feel that even though you feel you're in control, as time goes on more and more and more, you feel more and more out of control, more and more scared, more and more anxious, more and more angry and confused, until what happens, like the Jewish people, you just cracks and you start crying because it's not working. And that crying itself leads to Hashem sending you a Moshe, sending you a Tzaddik to tell you you're a slave. You're not free. That's why you are in such pain. It's not because of what's taking place. So Bezrat Hashem should send us Moshe Rabbeinu. He should send us the Tzaddik Yisod Olam. He should send us the final Mashiach to teach us that we're Ben Chorin, that we're free. That the Torah told us that we left Mitzrayim thousands of years ago, and we need to remember it every day. You are not a slave. You are free. Freedom starts here. Freedom starts here. Freedom is not in Washington, D.C. Freedom is not with some political party that was made by men. It's inside of you. So Bezrat Hashem, we should all find Moshe and listen to him and have the trust and faith that someone who cared so much about everybody besides himself, who had no vested interest in himself, who only cared about the Jewish people, who only cared about making the world a better place, that we listen to someone like that, even if his advice goes completely counter to modern society, and not to listen to people who, even though on paper they look good, they sound good, they might even have very tan skin from the tanning salon. They might even have no wrinkles on their face, despite the fact that they're 60 years old because they got some type of treatment. And they might even have hair transplants. But that doesn't mean on the inside that they're whole. It doesn't mean on the inside that they're not completely broken or lacking. It doesn't mean on the inside that they've figured really, truly anything out. It just means that they look a certain way. And the world is Alma de Shikra. It's a world of lies. And this is why the Ramchal says in the beginning of Masiyot Yesharim, his classic on Musar, which everybody holds by, that the first thing that a Jew needs to do, if he wants to be free, and he wants to have devekut with Hashem, and he wants to become a spiritual master and a spiritual warrior, first thing he says, he needs to have a time every day that he's by himself, that he is contemplating what's important and what's real in his life and what's not. What does that sound like? Tzipor to do that. So, and unless you do that, the Ramchal is saying, no matter how smart you are, no matter how educated you are, no matter how much you feel that you have a grip on what's going on, if you do not have that time every day, he says you can't even begin to climb the spiritual ladder to cherut, to freedom. Because we are so vulnerable, we're so susceptible to paro, which he explains, it comes from the word pere, which means to confuse or divert your attention. So, I explained to my friend, I appreciate, and I know that there's things that are going on. I'm not attempting to be ignorant or not understanding, but I told him that when I was younger, not so long ago, that I used to watch the news and I used to watch these videos all the time, and I used to see everything that's going on. And I would spend hours and hours watching these things. And ultimately, I was not a better person because of it. I wasn't a better contributing member of society because of it. All I did was have my emotions intensified and have very strong opinions about things. And even though we think, wow, that's amazing, somebody is intense and he has a strong opinion, the truth is, it's easy to do that. It's very, very easy to talk about what's wrong in the world. It's very, very, very hard to shine light in the world. It's very difficult to have such self-sacrifice that all you're trying to do is to bring good. That's much harder than getting up on a podcast or a YouTube channel or on the TV and saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You don't need any type of education to do that. All you need to do is to sound and look a certain way, and you're good to go. So, Bezrat Hashem, we should all see the truth in our lives. Hashem should shine that light for us, not in a way of destruction, not in a way of confusion. Bezrat Hashem, it should be with the Mashiach, Tzidkenu, and it should be in a way of peace and happiness and joy and clarity. And that we should all take a time to ourselves to go talk to Hashem and to go think about what's real in our lives and to go pursue it, whether it's here or whether it's somewhere else, and not to be trapped, not to get stuck. Ki tzaddik agadol hamiti, because a very great tzaddik, hamiti, this genuine great tzaddik, misavev imanu misubibim noraim ke'elu uvtzimtzumim niflaim ke'ela, that the whole entire mechanism that this very great spiritual master uses to help every single Jew is that he creates hakdamot, he creates introductions, he creates sovavim, he encircles us, so to speak, with content or with information or with wisdom, but which is very, very, very constricted in order that we should be able to understand it at our level. That he takes a very great light, a very great or, a very great chokhmah, something which is like the light of the sun, which is too intense for us to look at, and he, so to speak, he reflects it through the moon. His moon is by creating easy to understand mashalim, examples, stories, aphorisms, one-liners, even Chassidus is a constricted light. It's all in order that he should be able to that we should have the light of the Ein Sof in our life, which is unlimited, but we cannot hold that at our levels. So the very great tzaddik, the genuine tzaddik, he is able to encircle and matzamtzem, to contract that light for each person where he's holding. Ad she'ir bano hasagot elokut, until anybody can be illuminated with perceptions of godliness. Gam ba'odenu begufenu, both ourselves and our bodies. Kadesh yagia legam guf ha'ara mizeh, until that our bodies are even experiencing perceptions of godliness, not even just our souls. Kizeh ikar shlemut, because this is the essence of being whole. Gam la'guf mikol ha'arot v'asagot haneshama me'aseget. It's not just that our consciousness, that our neshama, that our mind is able to experience very deep things. But he says, ultimately, when does a person feel whole? When does he really experience true inner well-being? It's when both his body and his neshama are experiencing these tremendous perceptions of godliness. Kamo shekatuv b'Torah, like it says in the Torah, chotam b'toch chotam, right? Likutey Moharan, Rabbi Nachman says that there's a seal within a seal. We know when it comes to kashrut, in order to be able to determine if something's kosher, when there's more serious items that we need to determine the kashrut of it, because let's say it's from the Torah as opposed to from the rabbis, which is a higher level of isser, it's a higher level of prohibition. So then the rabbis instituted that there should be seals on them. So let's say, for instance, there's bread, kosher bread. So you need to have one seal on it. Now let's say you have wine. Wine is a higher level of isser. It comes from the Torah. So now what do you need to do? You need to have two seals. So that's why when you go get kosher wine, it always needs to have two seals. Otherwise, you're not able to trust it. So now he's saying, what are those two seals? It's the seal of your neshama and it's the seal of your guf. Meaning for you to be considered kosher, or for you to be able to be considered a tzaddik, for you to be able to consider someone who have attained spiritual mastery, you would have to have two seals, one on your soul and one on your body, that you experience godliness at both levels. Until your body perceives its master. And it's through the true tzaddik that every person achieves these hasagas, these perceptions of godliness, no matter where they're holding, and no matter where they're at in their spiritual journey, or not at in their spiritual journey. Somebody says, what halacha is this? This is from the Gemara. The Gemara discusses the fact that wine needs two seals. This is the reason as well, when you, let's say you have a bottle of wine, when you take off the cap and let's say you put it in your fridge, so you used it, you put it in your fridge. If you have, let's say, non-Jews who come into the house or work in your home, when they touch it, you can't use it anymore. So you need to be careful when it comes to wine specifically that it has this seal. You don't have to worry about it because every kashrut knows this, and therefore when you go get wine, kosher wine, it's going to have it already. But the point is that it's rooted in a spiritual matter, and that is that wine is the concept of consciousness. Someone says, what halacha are you reading right now in Likutey Halachot? So this is halacha dalet, ot dalet. This is the fourth halacha in Likutey Halachot, and it's the fourth section of that. But this is the reason why Rabbi Nachman says it's a sword to learn secular wisdom, because wisdom is like wine, like in the story of the lost princess, that the viceroy, who's us, who's trying to find the lost princess, first he loses his consciousness, right? He goes to sleep by eating from the tree. And Rav Aryeh Kaplan explains what is the eating of the tree. It has to do with us falling due to taiva, due to physical desire for something which is limited in this world, that it could cause us to have a time that we go to sleep. But he only slept for a little bit of time from that. Ultimately, when he fell asleep again, it was for 70 years. Why? Because he drank wine. He was told not to drink, and he ended up drinking wine because he thought it was water, meaning he thought it was good wisdom, he thought it was kosher, he thought it was something that would help him, and he ended up sleeping for 70 years. So we see that wine needs a double seal. Whatever wisdom that you're taking in for yourself needs a double seal because of the level in which it affects a person and his whether he's awake or whether he's sleeping. And this is why the pasuk says that he won't forsake my nefesh to Sha'ol. So Sha'ol literally means the nether worlds, but the Gemara explains that Sha'ol is a code word for Gehinnom. But Rabbi Nachman says Gehenna is not just for the next world, it's right now. Meaning that when David's saying that Hashem is not going to forsake me to Gehenna, he doesn't just mean then, he means right now. Not that I shouldn't be depressed, that I shouldn't be anxious, that I shouldn't be confused. These are all forms of Gehenna, right? Anybody who has these negative emotions from anger, from sadness, from all these things, you know that it feels like Gehenna. So Rabbi Nachman says it is. That's it right now. And David's saying, please don't bring me there. Nefesh hu b'chinad malchut. And the reason Rabbi Nachman, Rav Natan is bringing down now, why David HaMelech is saying specifically nafshi, my nefesh, is because like we've learned in the past, that there are 5 different names for the soul, 5 different levels of the soul. The lowest level of the soul is called your nefesh, which in the language of Kabbalah is called your malchut, or your amuna. So he's saying, don't forsake my malchut, my amuna, to Sheol, to Gehenna. Kiyadua, like it's known. Hainu, meaning bechinat chochma tata, like we have learned in this piece in Likutey Halachot, that amuna is not just faith. Amuna is actually a lower type of wisdom. It's a more constricted light. That the light of chochma, the light of godliness, which you see as clear as day, if you want to experience that light at a constricted level for you, you would do it through the mechanism of amuna. That amuna itself is a wisdom in and of itself. And that amuna is what's called lower wisdom. It doesn't mean it's less important. It doesn't mean it's less vital. It's equally important. It's just that the benefit of amuna, this lower wisdom, is that you can't receive the light of the sun at night. You can only receive the light of the moon. So when you're going through difficulties or challenges in your life, why is amuna at that point even more fundamental than chokhmah? Because you can't receive the light of chokhmah at nighttime. You can only receive the lower wisdom, the light of the moon. So you need to be able to know, like Rabbi Nachman says, how to run and return. That when it's daytime, how to run to Hashem. That means to be able to acquire chokhmah, that is divine hasagas of elokut, godliness, by learning, by praying, by doing hibodedut, X, Y, and Z. But at nighttime, you're not able to do these things because you're being besieged by negative influences, both internal and external. They're causing you to be confused, to be scared, to be sad, X, Y, and Z, to be angry. So you're not in a state then, let's say, to learn like you would, to go search for Hashem like you would. What do you need to do then? You need to have amuna pashuta. You need to have simple amuna. You need to say, Hashem, I know that this is very challenging and very hard. I don't know why this is good for me, but I believe that this is good for me. I believe this is from you. I believe you're the one who's causing this. I believe that this is for my very best. That's called chokhmah tata. That's called lower wisdom. And that's what David HaMelech is saying. Don't let me forget that, because that's what keeps me from Gehenna. It's not the upper wisdom, it's the lower wisdom. Ki kol lo ta'azov nafshi l'shol. Don't forsake my nefesh to Sheol. Shelo yipol chelki hamalchut sheli. Don't let my malchut, my emunah, be captured, because that's the one that's most vulnerable to being captured. Bechina chokhmat tatat sheli, meaning my lower wisdom. Shehu bechinat nafshi. That's the concept of my nefesh. Lo ta'azov lishol chas v'shalom shehem hachochmot chitzoniot. That it should not be captured by secular wisdom, by external wisdom. Shehem asitra achra v'aklipot, because they are the life force. They are the koach, the chiyut of the negative forces in the secular world. And by the way, you should know, the Or Chaim speaks about this. And obviously, Rabbi Nachman and Rav Natan have taught us about it, and will continue to in the future, that these 4 kingdoms which have put us into exile, even though that they were physical nations, they were physical people, and they had an ideology, their essence, their being was bound up with a spiritual force which you can't see, that there's a sar, that there is an emissary, that there is a source of spiritual energy or consciousness which you can't see, which is actually pouring down into this physical world and ends up manifesting in a group of people. And therefore the problem is not actually with, let's say, the Romans. The problem at its source is with the klipa of Edom, which has to do with secular wisdom. So we see here that if we want to defeat Edom, we're not going to defeat Edom through some type of political chap, through some type of societal understanding. We can only defeat Edom by cutting him off at its source. And Esav, as we know, head is in the cave of Machpelah, but his body is not. Because Esav was brilliant. He was very smart. He was very philosophical. He used to go to his father all the time and ask halachic questions, right? He used to know dikduk and pilpul and Torah, and yet he didn't do anything. Because his whole ikr of learning Torah was not for the sake of becoming a better person, which Rabbi Nachman and Rav Natan, and obviously Chazal say is the whole ikr of learning Torah, is that you should become a more elevated human being and that you should elevate everybody with you. It's not just that you know cool, sweet information. However, when a person learns without actually doing, Rabbi Nachman actually says that this is a greater danger, that he will end up doing even more acts of negativity, potentially, more acts that can harm other people. And we say that this was the case with Esav. So how do we cut? So we need to stop doing that. By us stop acting like Esav, we will cut off the Romans. We will cut off those forces in society which are trying to prevent us from experiencing peace and happiness and joy and good in our life. And we know that the final exile is Edom. And obviously, if you don't do Ibodadut and you don't have a Tzaddik Emet, you can easily get caught up with focusing on external means and external methods or approaches towards finding a solution to the problem, when the solution to the problem is not down here, it's up here. Shehotrim litgaber b'chol al yedei et al nefesh ha'adam shehu sichlo, that it strengthens all the time on the nefesh of man, that is his mind. Shetzarich lavo al yedei hasagot elokut, that he needs to come to, he needs to find a way that he comes to divine perceptions. Aval ani batuach ki lo tazov nafshi l'shol. However, I trust that I won't be forsaken my nefesh into Shaul, ki lo titen chasidech lirot shachat, because doesn't give your love, your chesed, to see destruction. Chasidecha, talking about Hashem. Ze bechinat harabi hatzadik ha'emet haosek b'tikuno. What is the concept of real chesed? Right, like Rabbi Nachman explains in the Likutey Halachot, that we say in the 13 midot of Hashem's rachamim, we say something called Rav Chesed, that you have tremendous chesed, tremendous compassion, kindness, love for us. So Rabbi Nachman says, what is Hashem's tremendous kindness and compassion for us? What is his Rav Chesed? It is Harav Chesed. It is the rabbi that's called Chesed. That the rabbi whose whole entire being is bound up with Chesed, meaning his whole entire ikr, his whole entire being is constantly trying to figure out ways to help the Jewish people elevate from mental, spiritual, physical, psychological slavery. That this is Hashem's Rav Chesed. So what is he saying? Ki lo titen chasidecha, that your chesed is not going to see shachat, is not going to see destruction, meaning your tzaddik emet is not going to allow the Jewish people to see destruction, because he's constantly busy trying to bring us to tikkun. Shebizchuto, that in his merit, the chocho, and in his power, ani batuach, I trust in this. Ki lo tazov nafshi l'shol, that if I have hikashrut with a true tzaddik, that if I have attachment with a real tzaddik, then my nefesh will never see Shaul. It will never see Gehenna, even in this world. Ki lo titen chasidecha, because won't give your chesed, shehu arabi tzaddik emet, meaning that this true, genuine teacher who's only busy with trying to lift up the Jewish people, that in his merit, that chesed will not allow me l'ra'ot shachat, to see destruction in my life. Kedei shehu lo yira shachat, shelo yitarech lirot luistakel l'sham b'chol eit uhalotenu misham. That doesn't need to see and to gaze there at any time at these things. So the central point is like this. When we think of Hashem's kindness, when we think of Hashem's good, we think of some type of metaphysical, you can't touch it, you can't taste it. So it's not true. It says, come, taste and see that Hashem is good. So how do I taste and see that Hashem is good? How do I taste his Rav Chesed? You do it through Harav Chesed. You do it through the Tzaddik Emet. Because the Gemara in Masechet Chagiga, Yud Bet, it says that what is the good, what is the light that's shown in the beginning of creation that Hashem hid away for the Tzaddikim in the future? It's the light of the Tzaddik himself. Because the Pasuk, I believe it's in Yeshaya, he says, say of the Tzaddik that he's good. So the Gemara learns out from that, not just say of him that he's good, like he's doing a good job, attaboy, keep it going, but that he is the good that's in the world. So if you're wondering to yourself, why do I not feel Hashem's love and kindness in my life? It's because you don't have hikashru to a real tzaddik, because that's where the good is. The good is not some imaginary or force, non-visible force in the world, which you're just hoping to one day find. He is the tzaddik. When you have attachment to a real tzaddik, you will find Hashem's chesed, his kindness. And like Rav Natan says all the time in his letters to his students, to those people who he encouraged, he said, I've seen a lot in my life. This world is filled with suffering and emotional distress and physical chaos. The only recourse that we have, the only safe haven that we have is the tzaddik. That he is like salt. And you can either choose the bitterness of this world by investing in this world, in which case you will never see Hashem's chesed. Or you can choose the Rav Chesed. You can find, Bezrat Hashem, have the zchut to look for the Rav Chesed. And then when you see him, that even if he gives you advice, which goes counter to your own ways of thinking, or he gives you encouragement in ways that you are not used to, that you choose to have hikashrut with him, that you choose to be attached to him, even if it's different than all of secular modern society thinks. And then you have the Rav Chesed in your life, and then you'll never see your emunah go into exile. But people always wonder, they see Breslovers and they say, how could it be that you have a pandemic that's going on in the world, and if you went to Uman, let's say for Hanukkah, you would see gigantic smiles on everybody's faces. What, they don't have financial issues? They don't have health issues? They don't have any, what? They have all those things. But they're all happy. Why? Because their emunah was not captured by the Sitra Achra. Their emunah is not being taken captive by the other side, meaning by secular wisdom, because Rabbi Nachman says it's a sore to learn it. It's a sore to see it. So because they have taken that leap of self-sacrifice, they have taken that leap, even though the modern world thinks it's insane, and even in the religious world, to have hikashrut with one tzaddik, to listen to everything he says at the expense of everything else, on paper looks fanatical or over the top. It's those people who are able to experience joy and simcha no matter what's going on in their life, because he is the Rav Chesed. And it's like we learned in the past, it's the power and the koach of Chesed that cuts off a person's emunah from being captured from the other side. So you need to have as much hikashrut with the tzaddik as you can, and hikashrut with the tzaddik again, attachment, connection, closeness with the tzaddik does not mean that I listen to Breslov techno music. It doesn't mean that I act irresponsibly. To have hikashrut with the tzaddik means whatever he says, I either do or I'm trying to do. So what does Rabbi Nachman says? Don't learn secular wisdom. What would have hikashrut to the tzaddik be practically? That I'm not learning secular wisdom. What if I am learning secular wisdom? Then you don't have hikashrut the Rav Chesed, and you will not see Hashem's Chesed. What about Rabbi Nachman says that I should do an hour of Yibodah do it every day? Let's say I don't do that. And I say, Hashem, I don't understand. Why do I not see good in my life? Because you don't have hikashrut with the tzaddik, who is the Rav Chesed. So you don't see Chesed, you don't see kindness. What about Rabbi Nachman that he says that you should learn the Shulchan Aruch every day? Oh, no, I'm good with the Hibodedut. Do I need to learn that every day? No, because I don't enjoy that as much as I do Hibodedut. I also don't. But to have hikashrut with the tzaddik means to follow his advice. And Rabbi Nachman says every single day you need to learn the Shulchan Aruch. So all of these things bring you to hikashrut. And when you do what the tzaddik wants us to do, when you want to, meaning the stuff that you connect to easily, that makes you feel good, that makes you feel connected, and especially when you do the things that he says to do that you don't naturally want to do, that it's not what you're desiring at that moment. When you do both of those things, then you have real hikashrut with the tzaddik, then you have the Rav Chesed in your life, then you can see Hashem's Chesed in your life, and then your emunah does not have the ability to be captured by the other side. Anybody have any questions from today's lesson?
The Likutey Halachot, is this considered as learning the halakha every day? Is the same thing, correct?
Not exactly.
So you have to get an actual
Shulchan
Aruch and learn it. Like
Yes.
Yalkut Yosef. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So what a lot of Breslovers do is they will learn Shulchan Aruch. They'll have one halacha seder, and what they'll do is they'll start with the Shulchan Aruch. They'll learn a little bit there, and then they'll do a piece in Likutey Halachot. And this way, they end up getting both.
So Likutey Halachot is just more in depth, more of understanding the bigger picture.
So the reason why Rav Nachman says to do anything always has a million hidden reasons. Okay, the simple reason is because all life force, Rabbi Nachman says, comes from the mitzvot. So all shefa that comes in the world comes from doing the mitzvot. Now, because there are 613 of them, and because there's many nuances to them, there's no way for you to actually, no matter how well-intentioned you are, know whether or not you're doing them if you're not learning it. Or if you are doing it, but maybe you're not doing it the way that Hashem asked us to do it, right? So just the simple understanding is the mitzvot are what Hashem wants us to do, right? They're the purpose of our lives, is to do these things.
Rav David.
1 second. So Rabbi Nachman is saying, so then therefore it becomes incumbent upon us that we are learning what Hashem wants, because that's what's going to cause good in our life. Now the deeper reasons comes with the fact that halakha is connected to the sphere of malchut. And it says that Hashem is only in the 4 dalet amot of halakha. In this world, it says that in the Gemara. Meaning that Hashem is present in this world in the form of emunah. And therefore, a Jew, even though it doesn't intellectually really make sense why learning halakha would bring me more emunah, but in fact, they're very connected because they both derive from the sphere of malchut. Rabbi Nachman and Rav Natan, we have learned already, talk about that by learning halakha, which is psak halakha, meaning that you're coming to a conclusion of a lot of machloket, which was for the right reasons, and you come to a conclusion for the right reason. This itself is a huge rectification for a person's faith, because he has in his own heart questions in his heart, and therefore he lacks faith. That's the end result. That's the psak halakha in his heart, is that I lack faith because of the questions in my heart. And by learning halakha, you actually nip that out. Another reason is because we are the last generation before Mashiach comes. And therefore, we are the most connected to everything that has to do with this lower sphere of malchut. And therefore, our ikr comes with the things that have to do with malchut. So what are the avodas that have to do with malchut? Number one is tefillah. And that's why Rav Chaim Vital, the main student of the Arizal, says that the final generation's main avoda will not be learning Torah, it will be prayer, which obviously you see Rabbi Nachman emphasize this the most. And he was attuned to this. Okay, that's because it comes from the sphere of malchut, and that's the sphere which we are trying to fix. And also, what comes from malchut? That is halacha. Okay, so therefore, there's many reasons why Rav Nachman said that we should learn it every day. But the biggest fact that we see how important it was to Rabbi Nachman was, besides the fact that he said in his lifetime we should learn it every day. Literally, he left the last testament before he passed away, and in that he really admonished all of us that we should have a time every single day that we learn halakha. And again, when you have the Rav Chesed or when you have the Tzaddik Ador who says to do something, even though there's always simple reasons for it, there's so many reasons for whatever he's saying. And the having the hikashrut in the Tzaddik means believing that he knows more than you. And that even though I don't seem to be gaining that same type of, let's say, spiritual high from learning halakha, maybe, to know that my ability to attain all those things that Rabbi Nachman wants to comes not just with the things that I like doing that he says, but also with the things that don't resonate with me as much, at least naturally.
Is it like Pitum Ketoret, when you read it, it's like you're actually doing it? So with the same with the line of halakha, since you have a shefa, you feel like when you're reading it, you almost like in a process, almost like doing it. You feel like would that be connected as well?
For sure. Anytime you learn something, but it's when you learn something for the sake of doing it. Meaning Rabbi Nachman says that, and this is a very deep thing, even before you actually do the halacha that you learn, if you learn anything, but I come in with the mindset is I'm learning this in order that I should bring it into my life in reality, not just intellectually. Meaning I'm not just coming into a class because I want to learn because I like learning. But if I specifically come to learn in order to do, he says there's tremendous tikkunim that happen for you and for the Jewish people. So this is too big of a topic to go into right now. It takes too much explanation, but suffice it to say, if I come to learn in order to do, there's a huge rectification that happens for you. And obviously there is no learning in order to do like halakha, because the whole entire concept of halakha is it deals with doing the Torah, as opposed to having intellectual discourse in the Torah. Any other questions before we end out? Okay, so listen, tonight we have a special class. Let me tell you what it is. Yeah.
You saw what I texted?
Let me see.
Oh, so that
Texted me on my phone?
Yeah. Not on the phone, like on a Zoom chat.
On the Zoom chat, let me see. I said the chizuk about the Asa that is very nice. Very nice, David. Beautiful. I hope that it was matzliach and it helped them.
Besides the fact that it's whatever you said about like that we supposed to do the ways of the Torah and doing it, it was from last week's parashat Vayichi.
Right. Yes. Very good, David. Okay, so I want to make a quick announcement, and then Bezrat Hashem, I'll let you guys have an amazing day, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, and that is like this. Tonight there's a special shiur. It's Shovavim right now, and there's having a special series. I was invited to speak tonight at 8 p.m. The address is 75-15 Main Street in the back entrance. It will also be live on Zoom, and we're going to be speaking about Tikkun Brit, and specifically I was asked to speak about Tikkun Klali. So for anybody who's interested in the origins of Tikkun Klali, why it's so important, what is the benefit of it, what does Rabbi Nachman have to do with Tikkun Brit, all of these things which are obviously very essential in Ikar for our generation, especially right before Mashiach comes, I highly suggest that you come to the class. It's better always to come to the class. And if you're not, that you should watch on Zoom. And Bezrat Hashem, that we should have a greater understanding of what is the tikkun of the Brit that comes from Rabbi Nachman, what is the source for why it's so important. Also, how do we rectify this? How do we fix this? Bezrat Hashem, everybody should have an amazing night. If anybody has any questions about tonight's lesson, you can call this number 516-946-4750, or you can text them and ask them where it is. What's the class going to be about? Whatever it is that you want to ask. His name is David Katanov, a very nice guy, very nice Jew. And there's also going to be food there at 7:45 p.m. So you can eat there first, and then Bezrat Hashem, we can have a beautiful lesson. Okay, so everybody have an amazing day, and Bezrat Hashem, we should have an incredible Shabbat. This is Parshat Shemot. Please, I beg everybody, when you read the Parsha, understand that this is not a past event, that this is happening right now, and that we're all dealing with it, and see where you are in it. And don't just think that you're reading a history story, and understand that there is a Moshe right now, that there is an Aaron right now, that there is a Jewish people right now, and they're still enslaved psychologically and spiritually to this thing that's called Paro, which is trying to divert our attentions from what's honestly and what's absolutely important, to make us focus on things which are not, and this is causing us to be enslaved. Everybody have an amazing, amazing, happy Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, guys.